On a conference about accessibility, of course, we're going to forget something to do with accessibility. So it's a great pleasure to be here. I am a designer. You can tell that from my costume. I'm wearing the costume of a designer, slightly, trousers that look like they're falling down, spiky hair that looks like I've stuck my finger into an electrical socket. But don't let that put you off. And there's the slides, the screen. I'm just checking to make sure that I'm wearing something different from what's on screen. So I'd love to invite you into my world, the world of design, because I really believe it powers accessibility. Hands up in the room, how many of you would consider yourself designers, either professionally or personally? So there's a smattering. So this is why we need this conversation. I come from the Royal College of Art, and our graduates have worked and designed many things. I guarantee you, you would have touched 12 things that have been designed by our graduates. And I should say, just in the interest of accessibility, I am a brown-skinned male with, I like to think, a really nicely trimmed beard, wearing a blue jacket, white shirt, jeans, and some funky boots. I will be describing what's on screen. If I don't describe it, it's because I'm reading out the words. So on screen is 6 tiled images of everything from a car to an Apple iPhone. So how many of you have heard of Apple? Only one person. Trick question, just to see if you need your morning coffee. Apple employ more of our graduates than any other university. But we're not just a university that teaches, we research, we engage with industry, we engage with business. The centre I have the privilege of working at has done over 300 projects with 200 organisations. On screen are 6 tiled images. Top left is some power tools developed with 80-year-olds and people with motor impairments. And bottom centre is Heathrow Terminal 5, where we ran through accessibility guidelines. We made sure every one of those 232 architects and designers built in accessibility. So if you go to Heathrow Terminal 5 and you like it, we designed it. If you don't like it, they executed accessibility badly. So I am an active designer, but I do come with a health warning. I love and live design. So I'm a total design fundamentalist. This is me. I don't just sit behind a desk. I go out and do research. So here I am holding what looks like a gun, but it's actually a video camera. And it's pointed at a lady in a wheelchair because we're shadowing her as she travels around London. This is looking at accessibility for the London taxi. And I also put this picture up because you can see what I look like without a beard. So I have a really important question for you guys. Do you like the beard or do you like the picture on the screen? Hands up who thinks I should keep the beard. Beard? Look at that. But there is a problem with design, and I can prove it to you. So if you pull out your smartphone and you type in the word designer, what comes up as a visual icon, which is already a little bit of exclusion, is this. And on screen is a little cartoon images of what a designer is. And it's 2 jaundiced French people from the 1940s wearing a beret and holding a paintbrush. But design is much more than an aesthetic offer. Design is about frameworking, about facilitating. It's about strategy. It's about creation. And most importantly, it's about humanity. One of the myths of design is you need lots of post-it notes to do it. On screen is an image of 2 people from Japan who are drowning in post-it notes, and this is a real image. I didn't make it up. There's a sea of post-it notes on the table. There's a wall of post-it notes behind them, and one of them has actually fallen on the ground and is leaning on the table. He's actually fallen down in his chair. He's so overwhelmed with post-it notes. But it's actually about people. So we need to shift from post-it notes to people. From design thinking to design doing. On screen is a 19-year-old Hong Kong student talking to a man in his 80s, a man who is experiencing the disabilities that come with age. The next slide shows another gentleman from Hong Kong, and research is a beautiful thing. These are some of the images of people we spoke to. This gentleman, Mr. Wong, he's recovering from a stroke. And we didn't just look at what is his functional needs. We looked at the context of his life. This is his life. So on screen is a bird's eye view of his bedroom. And you've got, the colors are incredible. You've got his bed, which is lined with stuff, and everything is stacked up because Hong Kong flats are small. His flat was 36 square meters. So to put that in context, it's about the size of 2 to 3 parking spaces. And don't design anything you wouldn't use yourself. On screen is a woman in her late 20s, early 30s. I can't give away her real age because she works with me. Her name is Gabrielle. And she's lying down in a bed that we created for people in care homes. And in the front of the picture is something called Aging in a Vertical City. That was the name of the project we were doing in Hong Kong. And you have to bring it back to a sense of self. So on screen is a group of fashion buyers from mainland China, and they're actually doing a yoga namaskar. They're clasping their hands together. And what we do in our workshops and training to bring people into design and inclusive design is starting with your sense of humanity. Because did inspiration ever come from a spreadsheet, or did it come from people? On screen are an image of people of all ages, abilities, genders, races, and we need to be more inclusive. There's 7.8 billion people on this planet. We need to include every single one. Design enables accessibility. We need to bring those two words together. We need to invite designers into the conversation and talk to those designers in the room. It's not enough to be invited to the table, you need to be asked to eat. But going a stage further, you need to be asked, what would you like to eat? So I think it's not just about presenteeism in the room. It's actually about enablement and empowerment. So design isn't just about making things pretty. It's also about functional delight. I'm going to be talking a lot more about delight. It is about joy, a word that's quite often forgotten, but it's something we need to bring into our vocabulary. Because why should accessibility not be joyful? Yesterday, I don't know if Julius, are you in the room? I was going to call him out. But yesterday, one of the things he said is joy missing in accessibility. And I wanted to put that up on screen this morning because as well as functionality, that's a basic level, but it's human dignity, human right, and a human enjoyment. I think that's incredibly important. It requires a shift in power, a shift to love, because for me, design is a love letter to the world. And the proof of this is everything you see around you is designed. So why should you not make that a love letter? Why should you not make people fall in love with what you design? So design, I believe, can bring joy to the world of accessibility. It can bring delight, it can bring smiles. Inclusive design is defined as including the needs of the widest number of people in design. And you know, the British government don't get everything right, but they got this right. It has a 29-year history, and on screen is a black and red book that's called Applied Ergonomics. This is the book that the term first appeared in 1994. We talk about having 4 axes of inclusive design, 4 basic ways people can be excluded. And on screen is a diagram that has this, and it's age, ability, gender, and race. There's many ways in which people can be excluded, but these are 4 starter areas, and we have to look at their intersectionality. You know, a disabled person is never just a disabled person. They have an age, they have a gender, they have a race, a cultural context, an aspiration. So age, we all know about age. On screen are some stats, but it's, the number of persons 60 years and over will grow the fastest in developing countries. Women tend to live longer than men. So if you're in Europe, become a woman and move to France because they live the longest. Gender, when we think about sexual orientation, on screen is a pie chart. And I just want you to look at the light blue section on the left, because that are the people who identify as straight or heterosexual, and it's 20%. So 80% identify in other ways. This is an American piece of research. Race, incredibly important, very close to my skin, it's on my skin. Where did the concept of race come from? And one thesis is Samuel Morton, a 19th century person, divided people into 5 races by getting different skulls and filling them with peppercorns. And the more peppercorns you could fill in the skull, the cleverer, he said, the people were. And yes, on screen, that is the order of descending intelligence, according to him. You've got Caucasian, then Mongolian, then Malay, then Native American, then African. And, if someone was to conduct that experiment now, they'd be laughed out the room. Craig Venter, a pioneer of DNA sequencing, says the concept of race has no genetic or scientific basis. And I'm going to say that again. The concept of race has no genetic or scientific basis. All humans are closely related. Everyone has the same collection of genes. And I feel really proud to say this for the first time here, but all people alive today are Africans. So I love your reaction. And how does this come into design? So on screen is a picture of a gentleman from African heritage wearing bright red glasses. Akeem was a student at the RCA, and he realized that glasses have existed for decades, but do not fit the face landmarks of low and wide nose profiles, excluding many black people and East Asians. So he redesigned glasses. Glasses have jumped from being a disability device to being a fashion device. So my 14-year-old cousin failed her eye test deliberately so she could get glasses because she thought they were cool. But have they jumped that racial barrier? So that's an intersectionality of ability and race. And ability is one of the most understudied areas. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock with Sarah from the Valuable 500, we'll be running a workshop on disability leadership and what does it mean. I'm not going to go through the stats in the interest of time because we all know them, but things like 61% of government websites are not accessible, and 79% of people with disabilities cannot evacuate during a disaster. So in the recent Ukraine war, it was people of color and people with disabilities that were really left behind. But companies who employ persons with disabilities are above average in terms of profitability and retention. So the message we have as designers is hire people with disabilities, include people with disabilities. They will make your organization better. We're all human together. Complicated diagram on screen, but just to say inclusive design has a process. So it's not just drawings on a page. Work with real people. And on screen is pictures of us doing that. Not fake people. And on screen are some screenshots of personas. And what do you notice about all these personas? They're all grinning like idiots. Why is it every time we see a corporate presentation with personas, people are grinning? But life is multifarious. Life is full of emotions that are different from, just smiling. Stop calling people users, because users use, consumers consume, but people live. And I don't think anyone in the history of the world has ever said, "Hi, my name's Rama, I'm a user of beer and Bollywood." You don't just say, you talk about something more human. So let's stop talking about users. Users typically denote someone who takes drugs. Design for ability versus design for disability, and this is a really important phrase. Everyone has aspiration, and 20-something years ago, when I did my first interaction with people with disabilities, that's something that really hit me. We were working with a charity called WizKids, with looking at wheelchair design for young children. And one of the things they said to us is, I want the trike to be a little bit dangerous. You know, I want to actually feel a little bit of exhilaration. You know, my parents wrapped me in cotton wool. And we realized what they want was, we designed a trike that was, you steered by shifting your body weight. So you didn't steer it using your hands or legs. And it was the coolest bike on the street. The guy didn't give us the prototype back in time for our show, this 8-year-old. And he had the most desirable bike of all the kids in his neighborhood. And that, for me, is also inclusive design. Disabled people are to designers what Serena Williams is to tennis. So by that, if you're going to design a tennis racket, you'd get Serena Williams. If it's good enough for her, it's good enough for anyone. And time again, we work with people with disabilities because it makes whatever design that you're doing just better. Simple example is a remote control. No one ever thought you'd need a remote control, and now I have one in my hand. So design makes most conversations better. A couple of quick case studies to end. This was a large UK government project. It was worth £8 million and involved a lot of the people you see on screen. It's a logo soup. I'm not going to go through their names. We were brought in to bring the human element. You know, the technology for disabled vehicles is there. But how does it land with people? We said the lead user group for this massive project should be people with disabilities, because they were talking to us about this being the experience, which is basically Aladdin on a flying carpet. It should be a flying carpet experience. We worked with many hundreds of people. We got them to design things. On screenshot is kind of Lego vehicles that they've built. We even managed to borrow a driverless vehicle from Heathrow Airport. You see that on screen. And disabled people were at the heart of this experience. We put them inside of it. We had people of all ages, all abilities, and we filmed what people were doing. It turns out people do more than drive in a car, and they do lots of other things. We created a lot of design briefs, and we created a 500-page document for the UK government, but being designers, we also had some fun. So we redefined a sports car to be a car that you can do sports in. And on screen is an image of a woman swimming in the car. So she's swimming her way to work. She's doing sports in the car. On screen is an image of a driverless vehicle that's the size of a photocopy machine. And it's about bringing deliveries, you know, the last kilometer. And on screen is a kind of it looks a bit like a melted wardrobe, but it's a toilet, and it's actually, we called it the Uberloo, because if Uber could offer another service, could they bring you a toilet when you needed it that was fully accessible? Because, you know, one human truth is when you've got to go, you've got to go. So this was speaking into that as a level of inclusivity. So design deals with reality. We're doing a project right now with Tata Consultancy Services, who do a lot of tech, inclusive tech, and we're doing a project on vocal accessibility. So I actually want to ask for your help here, because, so this is basically looking at voice control and looking to write a standard, because on the right you see a poster of The Rock and Siri coming together to save the world. But how many of us have tried to use voice interfaces and struggled? You know, for a friend of mine who's Scottish, it's incredibly disabling for him. He cannot get Siri to work, and he's one of the gentlest guys, but he wants to throw his phone out the window. So We're working with the British Standards Institute to create a publicly accessible standard. It'll be called 901. We're sort of inspired by the people, by what you guys launched here last year in Inclusive Africa 2022. So this is something, if you want to be part of the consultation process, just text me or email me. We want this really to go global. So even in major projects, major UX design, like a 6-meter by 2-meter video wall for an airport, an airline, to monitor their planes, we even brought a level of humanity. So in downtime, people run 12-hour shifts. And can this system encourage them to get better sleep, introduce them to other colleagues, or bring in that sort of human element? And the final case study is really this. What drove a £1 billion edtech unicorn? It started with people with learning disabilities. It's called Kahoot. You may have heard of it. It's used in every country apart from 15 in the world. On the left is an image of Johan Brand, one of the founders, who had a learning difficulty himself. On the right is an image of a mixed-race girl, and she has pure joy on her face. Why does she have that? Because using Kahoot for the first time in her life, she solved an equation. So Kahoot is about systemic group learning. Johan basically said, Kahoot meets the metrics of traditional business. They floated on the stock market. But they didn't do it in spite of their empathic and creative approach. They did it because of it. Johan said this: connecting and being joyful, that's the gift that the world needs. So it comes back to joy. And many people talk about his money, but not about joy. So on screen is just an image of a book that is freely available at a website called innovatingwithpeople.net. And that is a book on inclusive design with tools and techniques. It's been sold to nearly 50 countries. And on screen is a book that I just wrote on creative leadership. I'm not going to go into that because we'll be doing the workshop tomorrow at 2 o'clock in this room. But it's about creativity, empathy, and clarity. And on screen is a very beautifully designed graphic by a colleague of mine that depicts those 3 values. So design brings joy to accessibility. And it's so incredibly important that I wanted to do a special thing that I haven't done before. I actually wanted to speak finally a little bit about joy and read you a short poem about what joy is, because I believe that is what we need to bring into accessibility. Your joy is never one thing. It touches everything. It is a universe of expression, from tears that flow love from your eyes to the quiet that holds strength in your heart. It is laughter that runs liquid through your soul. It is the truest experience of yourself. It is the silence that lives within stillness and the magic of movement. It is the shyness of the morning light, the smiling strength of the midday sun. It is the graceful caress of a gentle moon. It holds no position, yet it holds every position. Your joy asks no questions. It demands no answers. It is never empty. It is always full. It is the truest expression of yourself when your heart sings its true purpose. And when it appears written large in your life, the world will smile with whispered gratitude to see you live your joyful truth. So include designers. We don't always wear a costume. Design is my love letter to the world, and let joyful accessibility be yours. On screen are some QR codes for you to get in touch with me. Please don't email me, I won't respond. But if you wish to get involved in any of the projects or talk further on this, please do use the QR codes. So with that, I'll draw this session on inclusive design to an end with these words, Kwa furaha imani na rehema, and hi ni mapenzi. Let accessibility be your love letter to the world. Let joy be your love letter to the world. Thank you.